Hello there, lords and ladies of the internet. Welcome back to the Council of Candor, episode 41. This one we're covering all about writing fight scenes. Sorry for any delays in the last few weeks. Had a bit of a kerfuffle at the household, but things are good now. It's been so long, actually, chat, that YouTube invented new features that they're going to abandon in 6 weeks, and they're demanding I use. The first one, yeah, no, it's exciting. The first one is this super chat chain. Apparently, they don't have enough money. So YouTube wants me to tell you that if 10 people, doesn't matter the dollar amount, send super chats within the next 2 hours, then the person who sent the top super chat can request us to do something. Within reason, of course. We're not going to be able to make out. Pag is too far away for me to kiss him softly tonight.
So true.
But yes, so before we fully dive in, today I think we should talk about our co-hosts and a little bit roughly of what's going on here. So before we go to the co-host, today's stream is going to be, like I said, about fight scenes. We want to cover how you write fight scenes, not just a physical I punch you, he punched me, but what's the story being told during the fight scenes? What are some of the elements that you should try to include in fight scenes, or things you should look for in other fight scenes to really make them pop, so you know what sets a good fight scene apart from a bad fight scene, besides just pure choreography. And the scene that I'm going to cover for us today is the throne room fight scene in Episode 6 of Star Wars with the Return of the Jedi. I think the story being told there is really important, and it's a great way to showcase just how do you tell a story in a scene. It's classical, of course. Pag, my co-host, would you like to tell us what scene you're covering today, my friend, and what drew you into it?
I brought one of my own fight scenes for the class to look at. It's a fight scene from a novel that hasn't been edited yet, either by me or by anyone else. So it's a tiny bit rough, just a wee bit on the rough side, but it's all right. I chose the scene because I just think it's a pretty fun, well-written fight scene, and kind of my goal for writing the series of novels that this comes from is mostly just fun stuff. So that's kind of it. It does show a little bit of character on the main character's part, but it doesn't really like move the plot forward all that much. It's just more of a study in how to write a fun fight scene, fun, fast fight scene that's entertaining to read.
Would you say it essentially could stand on its own the way we were going to look at it today? Like out of context from the story, it would still accomplish, characterization and everything.
Yeah, I think it could. And that's another of the reasons that I chose it, is that it's not really spoilery. If you take it out of context, you can pretty much immediately understand what's going on pretty well. So yeah, I would say that it probably. I'm not sure, of course. I could be wrong, but probably yeah. I think it'll stand out, and you'll get an idea for the protagonist's character.
I think if anything, this discussion will help. I think Legacy will have some good ideas.
Yeah.
Legacy is one of my favorite co-hosts, and I'm glad he's back with us. Speaking of which, Legacy, would you like to talk about yourself a bit, buddy?
Yes. So for my pick, I went along with the movie Fist of Legend with the actor Jet Li, and most particularly the final fight within that movie. As for the story, it's rather simplistic. It's not anything you would know like noteworthy, like shake off as something special, but the fight is astonishing. It offers good stakes, a proper allusion to previous fights, and overall, just like the good characterization between the protagonist and antagonist, and how they beat the crap out of each other.
Is there a lot of back and forth between them? I haven't seen it.
I could say you could split it up into 5 rounds.
Excellent. And last but not least, Mr. Pops, what are you bringing to the table with us, my friend?
All right, so this one, funny. I'll try to give some context to it when we get to my part of the discussion about it, because otherwise you might not quite understand what's going on, because there's a lot of kind of subtext between everything leading up to this. But I chose the the iconic apple fight from John Gardner's 1971 book Grendel, which a lot of you have probably had to suffer through reading in like middle school or maybe early in high school. It actually is one of my favorite books ever. I think it's really good. I love the prose and everything, and some of the symbolism and everything. I think tonally too, as well. It's a lot of fun. Anyone who knows the Beowulf story, I think it was the first ever like story written in the English language. To be honest with you, is an absolute classic, and you know what Grendel is. So this is kind of a take on that story from the monster's perspective, and we're going to get into it. It's going to be kind of an anti-fight as far as what happens. It's not a lot of like direct combat and actual violence, but the messaging behind it and kind of the way that it characterizes the two guys that are involved are great. So it's the quote unquote apple fight between Grendel and the shielding, like the Danish guy Unferth. I think he's either a Thane or a Dane. I forget what they were called back then, but yeah,
Thane.
it
Danish
is
for
a
the people from
oh,
Denmark.
gotcha.
Well, that's interesting. I like that you kind of chose something a little bit non-conventional, in that it's more the surrounding scaffolding for the fight that is not really detailed, rather than the fight itself. I think that'll be good to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of like the kind of ideologies that are being expressed and conflicting with each other are bigger than like the actual, physical conflict. So it caught my attention. It's kind of an iconic scene within the book, and it is one of my favorite books. So,
Well, I can dig it.
mhm.
I'm excited about it. All right, so with that chat, I think we're ready to start diving into it. And let me know if there's any errors on the screen, by the way, guys, or any issues with the audio. The OBS updated this morning, and you know how OBS is, loves to change everything and not tell me it changed anything.
Right on.
Yeah, technology.
We are going to start, I guess, with little old me, unless one of you guys wants to go first.
No, I vote for you.
All right.
Yeah, you go ahead.
So here we are, chat. I got to put my Disney. Don't worry, this isn't real. Shield up.
The fair use Fez.
Yeah. The Doge NFT. See if I can't maybe make it a little bit more transparent, so you guys can see what's going on a bit better.
Disney will not be fooled. The Death Squad is already coming to your house.
Yeah, they really get on that stuff.
Oh, they are so evil about that stuff.
Just like Nintendo.
Yeah, like it's one thing to want to like I guess secure your rights, if you will, and I get that. I'm all for that. I'm not one of these people who thinks companies shouldn't get any rights, but man, they are very, very aggressive. All right, so here, actually, let's start this. Now we go. So this is the fight scene that I chose, and I subtitled it as well for your chat. This is episode 6. I took all the different scenes throughout the movie where we see Vader and Luke fighting in the throne room with the Emperor, and I spliced them together into one single scene together. That way we cut out all the in-between bits, so we could just see how does the scene progress from a storytelling perspective, and what do we learn, and what do we just, see as the fight goes on. So as the fight starts up, we are in the throne room here, as you can see on screen. Luke and Vader are on neutral ground right now. Both think they have the advantage. Meanwhile, the Emperor knows he has the advantage. He knows that he's about to do some crazy stuff with what's going on with the rebels, and he knows he's about to pull the rug out from under him. This is a trick the Emperor has pulled multiple times. This is how he got Darth Vader on his side to begin with, and this is how he's planning to seduce Luke to the dark side as well. As you can see, it opens with Vader just dropped Luke off, and Palpatine saying that your fleet is lost. And from here, he starts talking about how Luke's friends are going to die. But Luke is still standing there with a heroic pose. His arms are to his side, ready to still grab the weapon and jump into the fight scene whenever he's ready. But Luke knows that his dad can end this. So he starts to look over at Vader.
Hey, kid.
Yes.
Hey. The thing isn't up on stream. The Doge.
The Doge isn't up?
No, the Doge is not up.
No.
For a while, it was paused, and I thought you had intended to just show the thing while it was paused. But the Doge is not up. It is playing video now with no Doge.
It's okay. We'll probably fine for a few seconds. So let's put it on screen now. And gotta love Disney. Yay. All right. I gotta
Look at the
actually
friendly
see.
dog.
When you guys talk to chat for a second, I gotta see how to reduce the opacity.
All right, chat. Yeah, so I think we'll be good because this has to be one of those iconic scenes that is on YouTube somewhere. You know what I mean? So it's like, I doubt it's been totally removed from everywhere, and I doubt they'll be totally looking for this specific scene to be taken down because regardless, everybody knows that it's going to be there anyway.
Mm-hmm.
On some capacity on this platform. So I'm hoping we're good. That's what my thoughts are right now.
There are multiple channels that have this specific scene up and monetized.
There you go.
So I think we're going to be okay. All right,
Yeah,
I
we
reduced
might
the
be okay.
Doge's opacity by enough that you should be able to see what's going on much better now. I'm going to put it right nice and center. All right, so where was we? Boom.
Wrinkly old man tricking people.
Ah, yes, the Emperor. My favorite villain in all of Star Wars. And yes, so this is setting up the fight scene. We start to have the tension being built. If I was allowed to show you the whole thing, you could hear the music starting to swell. And now Palpatine is tempting Luke. He's like, I know you're jealous. I know you're angry, little boy. So why don't you swing at me? Because Palpatine knows if Luke swings at him, that means Palpatine's winning. That means that Luke is losing his edge and he's succumbing to the dark side. Which is a fantastic setup because now this shows the tension for the fight scene isn't just can they kill Palpatine, it's can Luke hold on to himself long enough. And of course he slips and he jumps straight into trying to kill Palpatine. And of course, because Palpatine's in control of everything, Vader is there to stop him. The fight immediately begins as you see Luke throws Vader to the ground and he starts being aggressive, which is not how the fight should progress morally. Luke is winning the fight scene, but he's losing the moral high ground here, literally. As you can see in the fight scene, he has the high ground. What's up, Pops?
I absolutely wanted to bring that up as well. The fact that the Emperor, he manipulates people not even, to do his will, but also to change their own kind of ideology that they follow. He's very skilled in that way. And it's, like you said, the moral system is almost you can see Luke being corrupted, even though he might be winning the battle, he's losing the war, quote unquote, in his own, worldview.
Yeah, and that's central to the entirety of Star Wars. The entire theme of all the movies isn't so much can you win a fight or how strong are you. It's do you have the internal strength to do the things that are difficult. Every time Luke has to do something or anybody has to do something in these movies, it's always the harder, more correct thing to do, and it takes more strength to do it. Again, remember, the dark side is the coward's way out. It's the coward's way to power. The light side is just as powerful. That's important to the movies, important to the theming here, because if it wasn't just as powerful but required more work, then somebody like Vader really doesn't have an excuse for what he did. Granted, I know he's did some terrible things, and his redemption is something people don't feel like went over well, but the idea that he was lured to the dark side because it was the easy path and he didn't want to put in the work or risk the bad things is essential here. And it's great because, like Pop said, Luke immediately beats the crap out of Vader. Vader's on the ground, and Vader's almost beaten already. This just shows Luke has the capacity to win. But Luke immediately realizes, no, Palpatine's screwing with me. He's winning right now. So he turns off his lightsaber because he knows this is not the way that I should be fighting. And then that's when Vader comes in and starts taunting him that Obi-Wan taught him well. And then Luke realizes, yeah, he did teach me well. I shouldn't fight you. I know there's good in you, Dad. And what happens? Luke allows Vader to walk back up and have the same ground as him. In a fight, this is a bad thing, but from the storytelling perspective, he is telling us that I'm putting my dad on the same moral ground as me. And Vader, of course, because he's a villain, uses that to try to attack Luke. He thinks he's got the advantage now, both in the fight and in the morality of the situation. But because Luke is still a good person, he can hold his ground against the true evil. And the fight's going back and forth as you see Palpatine is, snickering in the background the whole time, and they're struggling. And as they keep attacking, more and more of the set is getting destroyed and chopped up, and more pieces are being destroyed. And then once again, Luke has the ultimate high ground. And while he's in the ultimate high ground, he ends up falling a little bit because he starts getting cocky. He starts now insulting his dad, coming at him like, haha, look, I can read your thoughts, Dad. I know what's going on here. He goes from having just a moral high ground to now becoming haughty and arrogant, which is shown by in a little bit when Vader is able to lash out and attack Luke and nearly get him while he's up there. It shows that Luke isn't as protected on the high ground, that simply being above him morally is not enough to win this fight. Palpatine knows this fight's not going his way, so he stands up and gets involved now. Again, this is showing how the fight scene is progressing the storyline. Now Luke is at his lowest point. What does he do? He goes under the bridge scene, underneath the throne room. He's hiding in the shadows. This is Luke, embracing the dark side in order to win the fight. Again, it's perfectly written for this scene. We start to see how the dark side is literally creeping over everything. The music starts crescendoing. It starts to get darker. Everything starts to get more darker is the best way I could describe it, which is in line with Luke's morality starting to slip as he starts trying to figure out, maybe I have to use the dark side. And what do we see while he's in total darkness? The one thing that gets him to slip, the one piece of dark side he has, is anger, his desire to protect his friends, specifically his sister, Princess Leia, and his first kiss as well. So that emotional rage just gets to him. And as he's literally in the darkest place he's in this fight scene, he's also mentally in the darkest place. This is some great, I'm going to pause it for a second, great layers and great context that's going on here. It's one of those things where as a viewer, you might not notice it the first time through, but as you begin watching it, your brain starts to categorize these things away. It starts to put them in the back to say, yes, look, this is how the fight scene's progressing. This is what's showing up here. This is how I know what's happening. I think Plinkett's the one who said, you may not have noticed it, but your brain sure did.
Yeah, it's incredible the way that can be done, excuse me, visually. Movies are such a great medium for that sort of thing because they can almost that kind of subconscious intensity in your brain where you see a certain setting and you go, oh, it's dark, and then obviously your brain makes connections, and then next thing you know, you're having that same level of kind of anguish or mental kind of like intensity, like I said, without even thinking about it. I don't know. I'm not even a movie guy. I'm just thinking about it.
The reason I picked this scene isn't just because it's my favorite fight scene ever. It's a great fight scene. I think I prefer, if we're doing Star Wars fight scenes, the fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin and Mustafar, even though it's a bit too long, I like that more. But this fight scene is written like storyteller perspective. If I was to show how do you write a fight scene, and how do you have characterization, how do you tell the story through the fight scene, how do you keep the themes intact, this is quintessential. And that's because Lucas wrote the original Star Wars trilogy scripts with the book The Hero of a Thousand Faces by Campbell, which is the quintessential guide and distillation of thousands of years of historical hero telling.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of things that have been lost with the Star Wars things, where they wanted to go more, you could say, action-oriented. It's like the prequels and sequels, where this is like, just throw everything against the wall. We have, like, Mace Windu beat the shit out of robots with his bare hands, and then later Rey use shooting lightning out of her hands and then blocking it with whatever.
Yeah. Well, the Windu beating stuff up wasn't in the movies, but I agree. Like, the more gonzo wild style they get into tends to degrade the thematics of the core work. But spin-off works are kind of going to do that no matter what. It's very hard to have a spin-off work that keeps the core identity of the original intact.
Yeah, I'm more forgiving with Gendy than the sequels, which just, ugh. Which is like, come on, what's up with the Alkalite? Like, what the hell is this? It's hurting my brain.
Play again. And so now, like I said, you see that he brages his hatred and his rage. And what happens? Luke begins fighting Vader. He begins pushing him on his back foot again. And slowly, even though Luke is engaged in his total rage, he walks them back into the light. And thematically, Luke is at a moment where he has to choose: is he going to go full dark or full light? So what does Lucas wisely do? He puts the fight scene on a bridge. It's a crossroads. It's a threshold. Once you cross that bridge, you're not coming back, Luke. And what happens on that bridge, the last chance he has, he cuts his father's hand off, and he's ready to cross it, figuratively and literally, to end Vader's life. But he stops for a second. He looks around. He's in light again. He becomes literally enlightened when he realizes, wait a second, this is exactly what the Emperor wants. Not only is the Emperor ready for this, the Emperor's done this before. He's not going to do it in a second, but he looks down at his robot hand, sees Vader's robot hand, and thinks, oh my goodness, this is him. This is how Palpatine gets to people. This is how he corrupted my father. I almost fell for it, and I know I'm a good person, which means that since my dad did fall for it, he still has to be a good person. I know there's light in him now, for sure. So... Any thoughts?
Yeah, but he did kill a bunch of children, so I don't know.
True, but Vader can't be fully redeemed. Is the thing. Vader has a long process. Yeah. That's why he has to die. That's why he can't survive this.
Mm-hmm.
The killing of the children is one of those things where it's difficult for Vader to fully come back from, but he still can. In fact, this is one of the reasons that I think it's laughable when people say Star Wars has got zero Christian identity in it. If this was a purely non-Christian piece of media, then there's no chance for redemption. Most Buddhist hells, you just go there, and you're there by default.
Yeah, and that's that. Yeah,
Sucks to suck, Chief. Yeah, and that's one of the things I think that sets Star Wars apart from a lot of other Asian media. Because, it's very inspired by samurai films, is Lucas still took a little bit of that American cowboy and that American Christianity into the Asian ideas and the way that a lot of these near Buddhist priests act. And so, well, what if they were acted like Buddhist aesthetics with the powerful weaponry and also had Christian ideas of good and evil? And that's why Star Wars resonates globally, because it actually is a global phenomenon, because it touches on everything from both major societal groups. I know there's more than the West and the East, but those are the two big storytelling traditions that we have.
You know what?
Those are the people with money.
You almost couldn't escape it with this being made by George Lucas, and having the American, perspective on everything. The Bible scripture is it's like the foundation for all the Western canon of storytelling, which is, you really can't escape it. So you're going to see that creeping in regardless of what you're reading, as long as it's from somebody with point of view.
And I'll say this, anybody who's worth a shit at all with storytelling is going to use the Bible. The Bible is a great collection of stories. I am baffled that there's not a single, even though it's going to probably be terrible with the way it is, but miniseries that just covers unknown books of the Bible. There's so many things you could go, especially the Old Testament, where everybody's just basically wild over there. Like Jezebel has thousands of guys killed because she wants to feel pretty. That's insane. She has all these girls executed just so she can feel hotter, because all the cute girls in the kingdom are dead except for her. That's nutty. And then never mind all the crazy crap that happens with just the Israelites fighting everybody. Every time they fight somebody when they get a new king, that king's great for 6 weeks and then he gets corrupted. If you took Game of Thrones style writing where everybody eventually gets corrupted and sucks, and had that skill that they had in the early seasons, and took that and put it into a biblical piece of work, you would have an outstanding TV series. And every few seasons you just refresh all the characters because the story's done.
It would be.
I can see that being really neat.
Yeah.
I can also see people saying that it's blasphemous and wrong to do at the same time.
Well, that's why you pick stories in the Bible that most people don't read. How many people do you know that understand that Jonah died when he went into the whale? People, that's a contentious thing that people still argue about, but he definitely dies when he goes in there.
I do. I think I did have.
It's a whole it's a whole thing about the whole theme of rebirth or being reborn. You know what I mean? So the whole transformational aspect of a lot of guys, obviously in scripture. Are we off the rails now? Of course, that's the whole deal, is that you have some dark place and then you become enlightened and everything.
You go down into hell and you come back with the knowledge on how to fight it.
I think I had two things when it comes to Christianity.
Go for it.
From my works, two ideas. Let's see. The first and foremost was basically Sierra going to a church basically going to a church to find, like, to figure out what the heck is Christianity. Well, not like figure it out. I guess something where it's like she finds a priest and then just kind of basically makes it like another way to cope. I'll put it roughly. And then the second one, which is a little more useful. Let's see. The mutants have a big major disagreement with certain human literature that they will burn on most of the books, including the Bible. But one mutant keeps it, and it was a Hordika. And Hordikas are well known for being vicious and hatred of humanity.
Right.
But one of them keeps it and basically becomes what you would call like a Joshua Graham type of character.
Cool. That's a great story to tell. Somebody who finds redemption. That's the story of Saul. Like, not King Saul, Saul who became Paul. That same idea of the most hateful, vile person you know. Remember, Saul in the Bible, for those of you who don't know, his pastime was killing, like, Christians, at the time Jews as well. He loved it. He had, like, oodles of fun, like, just saying, oh boy, I can't wait to wake up today and kill more Christians. And then he was, like, cast blind, and God's like, look, bro, cut that shit out. And then he became the best Christian to possibly ever live, to the point where he's one of the founders of the church. Like, Paul is the reason that we go from Christians being slightly disorganized groups throughout the Levant and Greece into the powerhouse religion. Most of he's like got, I think, the most words written in the New Testament are actually from Paul, because a lot of his letters are there.
Yeah, I think you're right. But it's one of those, again, it's somebody who's cast into darkness and, like, kind of sees how, bad they've become or something, how far they've fallen. In a physical way and obviously in a symbolic way, and then they find the light again and make something better of themselves. We're going to see a lot of I'm not even going to talk about the Christian themes in the Grendel story that I'm doing, but yeah, it's because obvious. But
we're going to get back to Star Wars now, because I know that's what chat wants. But before we do, I will say, if you want an idea of more stories to tell and you want, like, little bits of Christianity, Wendigoon just did a fantastic video covering an iceberg of a bunch of unknown biblical myths and theories. It's a really interesting, quick, like, brush up on a lot of topics if you want to become an expert fast, if you will. All right, back to Star Wars.
Wars in the Stars.
Yes. And then, yes, this scene, I love it. So Palpatine walked down his stairs. What does this mean? Palpatine is almost on the level with Luke, but he's still a little bit above Luke. This is his rank, because he still hasn't fully gone down the stairs. And you see the first time Palpatine stops smiling is when Luke puts his lightsaber aside, literally throws it aside, and says, no, I'm going to resist you, Palpatine, because my dad could have resisted you if he had somebody standing by him. And now you see Palpatine is angry and pissed off at the situation. So how does he lash out at Luke? He doesn't use his lightsaber. He uses his hatred, the vileness of his acts, which why Palpatine shoots lightning. It's quintessential and important that's what the thing he uses. He's a force of nature. He doesn't need a sword. He doesn't need a gun. He is showing you that he is just that powerful and that, primal.
Yes, it's pretty shocking that an old man could, shock you like that. Yeah.
All right, buddy.
And then we get, I do want to quickly go back to chat to Not All Farius. Yes, you are correct. His Roman citizenship opened a lot of stuff up. He got that citizenship, by the way, for killing Christians, which is really funny. They gave him that citizenship because, like, bro, you're great at killing Christians. We love you around here. Why don't you hang out at our house? And he said, all right, can I hang out at your house and show people how cool God is? So, big backfire, big L for the Romans. But yes, so back to the fight scene here. This part's just, I don't know. This is, to me, this is where Star Wars peaks. Like I said, I like other pieces of the movie and much more, but this is the climax for a reason. Palpatine is literally down there pouring all of his hatred, the vile power he has. He's an unbridled piece of nature, just destroying and inflaming into Luke. And what is the one thing that can save Luke is his father. But Vader has to make a choice. Every time Vader's talked beforehand, he's talked in terms of inevitabilities. You will fail. This has been done already. Your friends are already dead. They haven't even had a chance to fight yet, and Vader knows what the outcome. Because Vader's become pessimistic. He's given over to the dark side, and he's completely bought into the Emperor's worldview. There is no chance for redemption. There is no chance for a new life. Why even try? And now he sees his son resisting him, and he sees Palpatine is struggling. He's dumping all of his power into Luke, and not only is Luke resisting it, but Luke is attempting to stand up at this point. You think about that for a second. As you're watching the fight scene, we see Luke is suffering on the ground, yeah, but every single time Luke gets knocked down by the lightning, he catches his breath and tries to stand back up. That is way more powerful than if you had the normal fight scene where he shot a little bit of lightning and he was dodging around like you see in a lot of animes. It's the fact that Luke is struggling to stand up against this torrent of just vile power is what sets Vader to start thinking about it. And again, this is another scene where if you want to understand why people care about people in helmets and how Hollywood is stupid for thinking that we can't care about helmeted people, I'm going to actually risk taking the doze down for this because this is too important. You look at Vader's face. Look at the conflict in his eyes as he watches Luke get zapped and Luke begs for his father to help him. And the subtitles don't trigger properly because I love video file editing.
We do have to give it's killing me. The dude from The Sandlot who played Vader,
James Earl Jones.
No idea.
James Earl Jones, yeah, who also narrated Click in the scenes, which is good. Yeah, he's great. And what I love about that scene is that Vader speaks in absolutes. When you take into context also the idea that, like you said before, the Emperor is almost a force of nature. That you look at him when you subscribe to his point of view, his ideology, that the things that are being done are inevitable, the way that nature is. You know what I mean? And also on top of that, when you think about in the prequels, the whole idea with him is that he has like an absolute destiny that like ultimately he can't avoid. There's like, the prophecy about balance to the Force and everything. And we'll see how he brings balance to the Force in almost an ironic, unexpected way.
Mm-hmm.
It also plays into the idea that it still makes the movie good in context with those earlier years of his, that he has like destiny is a very big part of his character. And absolutely. Yeah.
And by the way, this is also the Greek form of destiny, which is another reason that I think that this film works so well internationally, because destiny in Asian media, like, you always work towards your destiny. You can't, there's no, I try to avoid my destiny and achieve it. You work towards it because that's what you're supposed to do. There's not really many stories in a lot of the Eastern media of somebody attempting to avoid their destiny and for them being still coming around and fulfilling it. When that is, like, every time in Greek stories, somebody gets their future predicted. That's all that happens. And 100% of the time. If you get if the Greeks predict that something's going to happen, just go with it. If you try to avoid it, it's going to happen.
You know what the worst thing is? Is my favorite example of that is Oedipus.
Oedipus is the best example.
Yeah, for real. Great story. Yeah. Building off of your whole thing about him getting up every single time he goes down. A lot of the time when you're writing, the best way to show who your character is to make that character suffer a lot. It's character development. And in a
suffering builds character.
Yeah, suffering does build character. In a fight scene, you can very easily have your character be down and out and show your character in a situation in which he is very, very close to the edge of death and he's on the ragged edge. And who is your character when he is on the ragged edge is who like that character really is. And just something you can do with fights really well, and something that this fight does. On the ground, getting the shit zapped out of him. Gets up over and over and over again.
It refuses to give in.
It forces the character in that moment to look within himself and find, is he like inner spirit? Like, does he have that inner heroism and everything? And it's like, can you prove yourself? Because you really only have yourself to rely on in these moments. Like Luke, if he didn't choose to get up and, keep fighting, I mean, it just, that's his whole deal, is that, he's still fighting for, so-called fighting the good fight, doing the right thing and everything. You get what I'm saying? Like, it really forces the character to look within and rely on, like, who they are, their backbone, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do they got the resolve? Do they get the grit to prove it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, long story short, put your character for the ringer. Sufferingfield's character.
Yeah.
So,
Like Sierra is a sweetheart, but she's getting her ass rocked by some of the villains I have.
that's
In
right.
fact, I'm probably going to make a main channel video eventually on this. I think that if you're a new writer and you especially want to work in science fiction and fantasy, you should read the Dresden Files. Those books are fantastic because as you read them, if you have any understanding of storytelling, I don't mean this insultingly. They're written simply enough that there's not a whole lot of fluff covering everything. You can very quickly see setups, payoffs, how the characters deal with things, and it's written in a way that if you wanted to learn how to write, that's what I would recommend you reading. Obviously, you should read Tolkien and some of the higher-minded stuff, but a lot of the concepts are going to go over your head. You're going to miss it if you're the first time trying to learn how to write, if you try to read a lot of the greats. But if you want to just note like a workhorse story, if you will, that's what I'd recommend. And all these things we described are in the Dresden Files. You see Harry get, the snot knocked out of him several times, and you see that constant character that he won't give up. That's the important thing. And also, a free cheat code to having a character be beloved, have him constantly get back up. Fight scenes peaked at Kirk versus Gorn. You were completely right, Alex Gomez. That is the best fight scene in cinema history.
So true, Oomphy.
And that music, that music is just too iconic. I wonder if that's almost out of copyright, though. It's got to be like, 20, 30 years from copyright.
Yeah, I don't know.
Gosh, that's going to be wild. Because I know Superman's out of copyright this year, isn't he?
Really?
I think in the 2030, I think.
It's coming. I don't know.
Oh
Yeah, it's somewhere around 2030. Can't remember.
Well, that's gonna be cool.
Yeah, I am ecstatic. By the way, it's also good to read the stories that inspired your favorite stories. Very true, Not All Fairy. It's very true.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, chat, I have a Superman story that I've been wanting to write for years, and I probably am going to write it in 2033. So stay around for when it comes out of copyright. So stay around for the next 8 years, and you'll be able to get my Superman story. I'll just roughly say it now because I know nobody in DC is watching this because we have normal human opinions. Nobody from DC is a normal human.
I'm a Marvel guy, so yeah.
Yeah. So the concept that I had for the Superman story, and we'll get back on track in a sec, I'm sorry, is basically this is Superman's first time he has to deal with a problem that he can't solve as Superman. The character is, and it's going to be a floating timeline until I figure out which one, but the idea is that Clark is working for the Daily Planet, right? Legacy is what he works for?
Yep.
Yeah, the Daily Planet.
Yeah.
The Daily Bugle.
Yeah. The Bugle or Planet? Because I know one Spider-Man.
It's a planet. The Bugle's the planet. No, the Bugle's for Spider-Man. The planet is Clark.
All right. Pops, don't throw me off, buddy. I had a few beers today. By the way, the Lone Warrior, we're doing great. How are you doing, buddy? So, like I said, the idea of the Superman story is he gets assigned to go with a senior reporter to cover a war zone somewhere. It could be Iraq, it could be Afghanistan, it could be some made-up war in, Stanistan or somewhere in the Central America. The war doesn't matter. But the idea is there's a rebel group here who's trying to fight against a dictatorship. And when they get there, Superman thinks, well, obviously, I know how to fix this problem. I'm just going to stop both sides from killing each other. So while Clark is trying to do his duties as a reporter, Superman is here trying to stop the conflict as well. And the entire time, the senior reporter who's with Clark is complaining about how Superman's just making things worse in the long run. How Superman's, by attempting to help the rebels, all he's going to do is embolden the worst part of the rebels. So then Superman steps back, and then the reporters are like, look, man, Superman, once again, by him being so heavy with the rebels to begin with and now stepping back, it makes them look bad, which is making more people fight them. And basically, this is the story of how Superman learned that he requires a light touch on society. He can't be all in. And of course, he learns that, and at the end of the story, the reporter is going to get shot and die horribly and tragically. But that's the idea of the story. The kernel of it is this is how Superman learns his light touch.
Oh yeah, I want to interject if you want a story where it's like a situation where Clark Kent should have solved it. The animated series with the episode "The Late Mr. Kent." I really like that episode. where it's
Yes,
like,
that's the
Clark Kent.
that's one of the best Superman stories, hands down, by far.
Yeah, like Clark Kent has to help out this guy who is going to be on death row by proving his innocence. He actually does manage to prove his innocence with a pizza delivery and whatnot, but he gets bombed in the way through. But at first he reminisced, I could have flown over there as Superman, but I would raise some awkward questions. I want this to be Clark's victory. Yeah, and he ended up getting that victory anyway, even though they did get him into trouble in faking his own death and whatnot.
Yeah, it still has a little bit of comic slop in it. Don't worry.
Your Honor.
It's a fucking good episode. But
Your Honor, I couldn't have been there. I had to deliver the pizza in 30 minutes or less.
Exactly. I think the other great Superman story is the one where his dad dies of cancer. Because like Superman can't fight cancer.
You mean like the Christopher Reeve movies with the heart thing?
Well, that's another one. That's heart problems, another good one. But no, in the animated series that happens too. And it's it's the best Superman story because it's the best DC stories tend to be when these characters who are near gods have to deal with human problems. Whereas Marvel characters are best because they're humans who have to deal with gods fighting to kill them.
Or just a literal monster like Bruce Banner.
Right, but like that's the idea. They're dealing with godlike abilities and powers, and they're only human. Whereas DC is gods having to deal with humanity. It's Marvel is humans dealing with gods. Essentially, that's the way you break it down. But I want to talk about the chat real quick. I'm glad that Lone Wanderer is good, and that Snow is really annoying.
Yeah, I agree.
Not all Ferris, you're correct. I can't use stuff like Korok, but that really doesn't matter. Again, the idea for the Superman story is it's a one-off one in a floating timeline that the war takes place in war-torn Landia, and it doesn't really matter the culture of the war. The idea is Superman trying to how much of a touch does he do, and I think that's the correct way to explore Superman. Not if Superman goes evil. That's not interesting. That only becomes interesting as a result of what happens. Make your own character called Uberman. That's probably gonna true and but like. Well, it's just one of those things where, like, yeah, yeah, just make him a German. Nietzsche would be very happy. Yeah, exactly. But like, I get that idea, and I get the idea of creating your own character. But sometimes an established character is what you want, and if you're going to make a ripoff of that character, you may as well just write that character into it. Besides, pitching it to DC. All they could do is say no, and then if it's out of copyright, guess what, dickwads? I could publish it anyway. So
I think I've heard a good lesson from like Literature Devil in regards to like making an original character. Don't start off by making them out as original. Start off with like the consistency first, and then make sure you get the original stuff later.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
you gotta have like a story basis off that you can work off of, and then you could get to the originality.
All great artists imitate other great artists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good artists imitate, great artists steal.
What is it? What's that saying? Yep. Life imitates art, or art imitates life.
That's another good saying. But I want to answer two of Alex's questions here. Wouldn't they know it's his identity when the bullets bounce off? So, Alex, Clark would never get shot.
That's not
if Clark gets shot in the story, I have failed as a writer. Because Clark is supposed to be the junior photographer helping the senior reporter. And you know that because he's a junior, the senior reporter is going to treat him like a baby and not let him do the lethal stuff, which is correct, by the way. You shouldn't throw your reporters into gunfire. The guys who are cool enough to cover wars shouldn't be thrown into gunfire. The reporters who live in DC probably should be, but that's a different issue.
I remember in the Christopher Reeve movie, he catches a bullet while trying to protect Lois from getting shot, and he just catches it in his hand and be like, "Oh, this is nothing at all."
Exactly. Yep, that's mine now.
Yeah, because Clark Kent puts up the bravado in just feeble manner where it's like, yeah, this guy would not get shot with a bullet.
Exactly.
Well, anything for your girl,
Mm-hmm. Now it's got it. The Marvel's about humans trying to fit in the world of gods. DC's about gods trying to fit in the world of humans, with exceptions. That's what it's going for. And they say the key to originality is to hide your inspirations. So I think that's both true and false. I think that you should not hide your inspirations. If you are a good enough writer and you're good enough at making a character, your inspirations will be obvious, but they'll be so obvious that nobody could say it's your not your own thing.
The basis for Sierra was just practically My Life's a Teenage Robot with was it Jenny, Brad, and Tuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Which is-
what's important is that it needs to, like, I'm thinking about books specifically, like the books that I know. I've read several books that have inspired one another, because some of them are, older and then newer and this and that. I think what's important is that you need to have it be that people who understand what you're referencing or retelling or everything, they need to appreciate it as something that can still stand on its own either way.
Yes,
It
you're
can
not copying, you're
story.
referencing.
Yeah, but it still needs to be its own story, to the extent that it's, you don't need to know what it came from in order for it to be considered good.
Exactly. And then to answer something from Future Wario, speaking of writing heroes, villains, and fight scenes, in my story, my main hero is Clay, the gnome wizard, who has to learn more magic to become powerful and defeat Omen Owen, the evil gray dwarf wizard. I believe you've mentioned this before, Future Wario.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think so.
And yeah.
I like that. To Alex, I assume that you think you're talking about the Marvel and DC being gods things. I agree that it's a bit too much of a simplification, but it's a really good, quick way to get you into the idea of what each storyline it should be when you're trying to pick up a comic. DC tends to do really, really badly with a lot of the street level stuff, whereas Marvel excels at street level stuff. And it gets really weird and sloppy when it gets to high level things.
I think
Broadly,
my
of course.
problem, I think like my little problem with some DC heroes is that either they'll just become too powerful, they could just clear out the opposition with ease. And then there's cases where that one story where Joker apparently was organized by Batman apparently organized a whole ordeal where Joker got bored and went into Superman's town just to test Superman. Where it's like, yeah, wait, huh? You're telling me you just managed to just bore your worst enemy to go to your coworker's town just to test him, and somehow he failed, even though he was clowning with him?
Alex,
Really?
Alex Gomez, let me in. So you say you don't quite agree with the idea that you need to hide your inspirations. You're correct in disagreeing with that.
Yeah,
But the thing, it needs to be able to stand on its own to, the extent that, it's still enjoyable without having known where it came from. But the ultimate goal should still be, what will the masses eat up? Write slop if you have to. Make money. The most important thing is that you have an audience and that you can actually, well, not to get all nerdy, but you need to kind of have them look at it as something that's like, all right, I love this. You need to transform the minds of the audience. I don't know, draw them in. Everything.
I soft agree with what you're saying, Pops. And even though you're kind of joking a bit, you probably should, if you want. When you're writing stories, you have to choose. Are you writing them solely for you? If they're just for you and your friends, then you don't have to worry about your audience, kind of. But if you're writing stories for you want to make money on them, you really should be looking at what stories are selling, and you might have a gap.
What I've heard is you ask yourself two questions: is who are you writing for, and what do you want them to get out of it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And
yeah, you kind of have to choose a goal when you're starting out with something. I mean, it's just part of the gig.
Well, and not just that, but it'll help guide you as a new author. If you have an idea of this is the type of story I want to tell, it's going to be way easier to write your story because you'll kind of know when you're wandering off path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that and outlines. Get an outline.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
I promise you're not George R. R. Martin and you're not Stephen King. You can't just be a pantser when you start writing. Do an outline. Because I'll tell you this. The good thing about an outline is if you really are that pantser who will, or I guess they call them gardeners, who just grow their story and see how it comes. Yes,
there's a new term for it I've heard, because I watch too many YouTube videos sometimes. They call it a discovery writer.
Oh, discovery writer.
Is that you just, start out with, the Hemingway quote, write the truest sentence you can think of. And then you just let it flow, and then eventually you discover where you want to go with things. Now, that's obviously not something that a lot of people are talented enough to do. And at the same time, even if you think you can, it's going to take some editing and revisioning. You know what I mean? But I think that's what they call it, was the quote unquote discovery writer.
That's fine. I'll use their terms. If you think you're a discovery writer, I'm happy for you. Unfortunately, you also should probably do an outline first, because if you really are truly a discovery writer, and that's what will let your muse fly and give you all the inspirations you need, you'll find out really quickly when you have to do an outline. And
I'll tell
guess
you
what?
what.
If you hate outlines, you'll find out how to do the bare minimum outlines, so you don't have to do them anymore if they really bother you that much.
I think that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think that sort of strategy works best for poetry, not really, creating a world, especially in the genres that, like, that a lot of the audience would prefer. Like we're talking about Star Wars. You can't just make up whatever. You
Yeah,
need to have a concrete thing to go off of a lot of the time.
Yeah, the shorter the
And it's
medium
what I
you
said.
have, the less like strings you have to make sure all go the right way.
The other thing is, I think a lot of people tend to fail with, and this goes to D&D a lot as well for people who are dungeon masters in here listening, is you can improv and like discover right very easily, but to do that you have to have such a deep understanding of like either the characters or the world, or both the characters in the world, that you can kind of pull as you're going. You could develop things because you know the setting, if you will, well enough. But that's very difficult, and that takes a lot of prep work. So you may as well just write an outline to keep it easier for you. I know for a fact that for me, like in my home table, my players literally could point to anywhere on the map, and I have adventures and stuff ready there because it's been in my head for 12, 15 years, this place. So, like, I know what's going on in a lot of the stuff that they can see, and I'm ready for it. But that's also me not writing stories for people, because I know that's not fun to read. It's more fun to play. So if I was to write a story, I still outline it. And I do want to talk about the chat. Future Wario, you are correct. I did say that as well at the beginning of the stream. That's the best fight scene. However, this fight scene here with Obi-Wan, with Luke versus Vader, it's much easier to see what's going on in the scene here. It's much easier to understand the themes and ideas being talked about.
Also, copyright's a bitch.
Yeah, copyright is a bitch. George, if you're in here, you're a bum.
So true.
Then if George R. R. Martin is listening too, hey, if George is listening, I will write his next book for him and help him edit it. I think that he has some great foundations, some great ideas. He just doesn't want to finish it because he's scared.
I've heard a bunch of times. I feel like it's. I think I agree with the theory that he's almost written himself into like such a tangled web of things that it's like, how do I wrap this up? You know what I mean? And it was great, like the storylines and obviously the characters and everything are incredible. But it's one of those things where it's like you want to live in that universe, but you don't know how to actually end the narrative.
Yeah, the problem is he's torn between two things: how the story wants to end, which is completely antithetical to all of the ideas he holds about how stories should work, and he wants it to end, because he wants it to end with like a big fight scene, and it's pretty dour, and oh, look, woe's me, all the characters I've lost. But like in actuality, because humans are not the worst things to ever be created, they eventually will just win, and they'll eventually do like a good enough job. So you have to be stuck between he wants the White Walkers to basically win, but if the White Walkers work to get close to winning, humanity would just unify and stop them, because we're not that stupid. So, anyway, all right, let's get back to Star Wars so we can get on to the next lovely
fight.
thing. Yes.
Oh yeah,
next set of hands.
So yeah, so like I was saying here, at this point, this is the climax of the fight scene where Vader finally decides that he can do something right for the first time. This is actually the first choice Vader knowingly makes in, I believe, all three movies. Because beforehand, every time Vader does something, it's because he thinks it's inevitable, except for when he lashes out and attacks his crew. Even so, though, he could argue that was always going to happen because that character sucks. But yeah.
Well, that's more of a matter of like he deserved it in his mind.
It's true. He does,
because
he does deserve it.
It still serves well as a characterization moment for Vader.
Another thing that
I love when he just like turns and looks over at the Emperor and is like, I don't know about this guy. I'm beginning to feel not good.
He's like,
I may be on the wrong team here.
Yeah. Are we the baddies?
That is my son. By the way, was it the right or left hand that they were missing?
The right hand.
Right. Yeah.
Which is hugely important.
Symbolically, that okay.
It's, again, Star Wars. This is why, by the way, the sequels suck so hard, because the sequels are only referencing the Star Wars trilogies instead of referencing like real works. I think what's the guy that's always on Gary and Drinker streams?
I don't know.
He's the white guy. Legacy, you might know who he is. Chris Gore. Chris Gore, is correct. Yeah, he's correct that the reason Star Wars and like Star Trek suck is because they're only referencing Star Wars and Star Trek nowadays. That is completely true. Because
God, it's past events. Oh my God, you know the thing. I know that thing.
And that's the thing. It's like you can't only reference the past. You really should, not just that, but like, if you want to be inspired correctly, you should look at what inspired the guys who were inspired to do the thing that inspired you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go watch it. It blows my mind because like old samurai movies are cool. Old cowboy movies are dope. And the old Flash Gordon cartoons and like, serials are fantastic. Like, I don't get, like, if I was working for Lucasfilm, why wouldn't you? Because Lucas has like all these things preserved in vaults ready for everybody to watch. Like, I know he doesn't work for them anymore, but I guarantee if you were a writer and you called up, Lucasfilm and said, hey, give me George's phone number. I want to ask him if I can come over to his house and watch movies with him. There's no way George Lucas would say no. If you've seen him in talking to people, he's enough of a dweeb that he'd be like, oh, yes, we were going to watch Kurosawa's third best film. This is Yojimbo. This is the Yojimbo cut where Yojimbo has 2 swords because he was meant to only have one for this whole time. Like, that's the type of dweeb that Lucas would be, and you'd love it. And I would love to just listen to talk like, yes, and this inspired Glum Shido, you say.
Yeah, again, that's why you guys, everyone in the audience who wants to learn how to write, you need to read the Bible and then probably Moby Dick.
Yes. Go read the Iliad, the Odyssey, and the Bible, and you can actually write now.
Yeah.
Bible.
It's just, and again, remember, you don't have to read the Bible as like a spiritual thing. I get it. I would, because I love it and I think it's a good book and it's correct. But even if you're an atheist or a Jew or a Muslim, read the Bible because the stories there are just foundational to everything. Everything. It's so good.
Yeah.
But yes, so that is my fight scene autopsy, if you will. Shad, I'm stealing the name and coming for you and your AI art opinions next.
Do the whole Sam Hockford. I'm coming to kill you.
Exactly.
Good.
No,
Is
I would
this
not
the
kill
one?
Shad. I like Shad. He's goofy and weird, but I like Shad.
Vader does the Emperor eventually.
He does. He domes
And
up.
that, again, is how it's, like you said before, the kind of fighting your own destiny throughout your life, and then at the end you fulfill it anyway. He brings balance to the Force in kind of a backwards way by destroying both sides of it. So he's still fulfilling his destiny. It's interesting. The way that, like you said, he's resisting what he knows to be the ultimate kind of, I guess you could say, achievement that he's meant to do.
I agree. All right, so who wants to go next for their fight scene autopsy dissection?
I'll do it.
All right, Legacy's up.
Go for it.
All right. Bring it up.
It is on screen, so we're seeing. I can't stream it.
Okay, so I might actually have to do something on my end.
Is it not on the video? I think it's on the video.
It's on the YouTube channel, yeah.
It's on the YouTube thing. I'm just talking about, in the call.
Well, here, I got both videos linked into one video file. If you want to pull them up, and then we'll count down and we can play together, Legacy, and you tell me when you want to pause it. That way, if you want to look at it on your screen, you can, because there's no audio on this version of this one. Yeah.
Either way, Legacy, you can give us the play-by-play, right? The meaning.
Okay, so
you let me know when it's pulled up, and I'll hit play on it for you, buddy, and that way chat can watch as you talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta see this for myself because it's trying to
pull it up on YouTube. You sent me the links earlier. They're still pinned, I believe, in the palace. I think they're still.
Yeah,
pinned.
you could.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
Right.
Fine. I'll look at
His face like a skull. Yeah, it is pretty dope. I was thinking about that. It's the Doge NFT would make a really awesome baklava. So yeah, you know what? That's gonna be my
Yeah.
first piece of merch is a
All
Doge bandana.
Yeah.
Next
Alright,
will be
yeah.
first.
All right,
Exactly.
let's play the thing.
3.
It's only like 45 seconds.
Yep. Uno, dos, tres, go. Wants us to show. So I'm going to pause it
Yes.
here, Legacy. So we
Wait.
watched the whole thing. So tell us a bit about this general guy and why you wanted to show this scene, Legacy. The floor is yours.
Okay, so the whole ordeal with the general is pretty much he's responsible for the whole conflict of the movie starting to begin with. Basically, it is a whole ordeal with Chinese, whole China versus Japan. But the whole thing started is essentially a mystery of who killed my master. How did the master lose to the seemingly amateur master? Simple, he was poisoned. Who poisoned him? It was the general. And when one of the amateur masters went to the general and go say wait a minute, how did you? It's like one of his students kicked my ass. It's like there's no way you could have beaten the master. And it's like, oh yeah, no, I poisoned him. And it's like, no, that's criminal. You can't do that. And then he just kills the guy by breaking his back with his knee. And it'd be like, yeah, no, well, I want this. I want to make sure the Chinese front gets absolutely demolished. And it's like he has a lot of ambitious plans for the that guy.
He poisoned somebody to sabotage an actual fight.
He poisoned the protagonist's master, and then he got into the fight with another Japanese guy to make you pretty much just make Japan look good, even though the master was definitely not at his best.
I mean, it's the standard for these types of films. The Japanese general guy comes through and he's a real asshole to a bunch of people for no reason, which is I mean
he's more of the quiet type, but yeah.
There's no thing to be colored about that. And then the protagonist has to go and beat the shit out of him. That's as for this demonstration, you see here, this is definitely very late before the actual final fight happens, but it shows us this is not just
it's great.
He just wipes it off and be like, just a little dust. I just hit my head against a rock. Nothing.
It's beautiful.
So these guys are usually real martial artists. I wonder what this guy.
Now.
I wonder if he.
What belt? What belt did he?
Yeah. Yeah. What did he achieve?
He's only a blue belt.
It's only a blue.
Yeah, I don't know his profession, the actor, but
the real ones.
Yeah.
The real ones are. I don't know. I don't know what the high level of strength in a black belt.
What's this movie called?
Fist of Legend.
Maybe he's like a 9th Dan black belt. Fist of Legend.
All right, so you ready for the next big scene that you set, Legacy?
Yeah, the big final fight.
Let me know when you got it pulled up.
Let's see. Yep.
All right, chat. Now you're ready for the fight scene. By the way, I'm going to say this for those of you who know. Strangely thematic that Legacy chose a Japanese assault on the Chinese in World War II. That was strangely relevant today in the server. By the way, join below.
Yeah. Also, the guy, his name is Yasuki Kurata, and he is a 7th Dan black belt in karate, a 3rd degree black belt in judo, and a 2nd degree in aikido. That guy is a certified badass.
That is so
slaps
awesome.
your girlfriend's ass, you thank him and ask for another.
Yeah, for real.
I absolutely love how they would incorporate people who actually were skilled in the the things that were showing on screen. I don't know if we see that anymore. Everything.
Old school Hollywood used to do that too. They used to get actual Marines and stuff and be like, "All right, boys, learn how to act."
Yeah, I think this is like Delta Force, where they got a whole array of vehicles and crap, and they blow up stuff. That's crazy.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna hit play together.
That's why I love kung fu movies.
Ready?
All
3,
right.
2, 1, go! Yeah, so he got that role because he was an advisor on set, and originally, I think it was Kubrick was supposed to be the the sergeant. He's like, "You're not yelling at them, correct?" And he just says, "Here's how you yell at them." And he
Really?
turns and he just shot some of those vile shit ever at them. And then like, "This is how you be a drill sergeant." And like, he had one of the actors crying, and he was like, "Okay, you're my new drill sergeant. Do that, but use less swear words."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it said less swear words, and in fact, the first takes they did of their scenes where he's ripping them down in the barracks, that was unscripted, alleged.
That's crazy.
So funny.
Yeah, of course they asked him later. He's like, "Yeah, I knew who the actors were, so I wrote some of this stuff down to make sure I had some pretty good insults built up." But like, he's like, a lot of the things I said, they was just screaming at them. Like, that was just unscripted in the moment. This is what I would say as a drill sergeant.
Oh my goodness.
I can see that. That's so fucking funny.
I love the gift of gab he had. Incredible.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We used to have stuff like that. Like Harrison Ford got cast, remember, in American Graffiti because he was hanging a door for Francis Ford Coppola. And Lucas is like, "Man, I need a guy who looks kind of rugged like a day worker." And Coppola's like, "What about him over there?" And like, "How much did you charge?" "My day rate." "Okay, that's cheap enough." That's why if you look at Harrison Ford, he always acts like he's an angry 40-year-old plumber because he really is that at heart. All right.
Awesome.
Can we play again, Legacy, in 3, 2, 1.
Round 1. And we're going to get to somewhere in the 4th round where he puts his arm back in.
Yeah, that move where he does that is nasty.
That is true.
If I saw some guy do that, I would be like, I don't think I'm going to fight this guy.
That's one of the things where it's like, because it comes across too as he's doing it like pretty naturally. You really don't see that the way things are choreographed nowadays. You need somebody who's really going to that presence with them as somebody who really, really is confident in their ability to do this move in real life. You know?
Yes.
I feel like
that's why he's the antagonist. Like, we've shown him punch boulders. I mean, no, it's movie magic. It's fake, but...
So, real quick, I want to answer Legacy on Alex Gomez's question. This movie is, if I recall Legacy, it's Fist of Legend, 1994, right?
Yeah, Fist of Legend. The Dragon Dynasty. Yeah.
There you go. Alex was curious about it. And not all fairies know I've not seen Maki.
Aki's the worst. You know how the guy gets punched and doesn't flinch? Like that's Baki in every episode.
Oh no, he said Maki. Maki is a Bollywood film about a guy dying and becoming back as a fly and getting revenge through kung fu.
Sorry.
Baki's the one where he thinks he's so powerful that all men are women to him.
I was thinking.
Baki's dad thinks every man is a woman, but there's Baki where he could just look at a cockroach and imagine all of his joints as liquid. And break over 600 miles an hour. I don't know.
Well.
Oh, Baki's weird.
Baki's great, bro. Baki's hilarious.
I love it.
Big sweaty men, bro.
Gotta love those big sweaty men. Every way.
Yeah, this is where the protagonist is starting to get the advantage over the general, and his eyes continuing to twitch.
Did he have a stroke or something earlier?
You think the twitch shows a level of uncertainty?
It shows a weakness. This guy can go down, and now he's on the ground, and he has nothing but a sword, so all of his options are out. And he has to go with, the most drastic one. The sword. Stab the guy.
He could also just call for his guys who are outside. But he's more honorable than that.
That's right.
So it does kind of show something about him, that he's not willing to just do that, have them shot out of hand.
Yeah, they think the fight's over, but it's still continuing. He stabs through the other guy's arm and is like, "Oh, get out of the way!" And it's like, "Oh God, he's still going up. He's still going to kill me. He's going to kill me." It's like he's not going to go down. So he's just going to cut through everything until, Jet Li pulls out the belt and proceeds to whip him. Notice how he still hasn't moved his other arm. Get it in a more comfortable position where he could have cut that through that. Because it's disabled. He can only use one hand swings, so he can't angle it in a way where it can cut through that belt.
If this was the Last Jedi, though, they just edit that out because they're lazy and they don't know how to do fight scenes.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, they just edit out of his
Oh.
broken arm and it's just fixed.
It's all flash, dude. Yeah. The people, yeah, it's just they get hurt like obscenely, and then they're just like the next scene. Nah, we're good.
His foot of scratch.
But
Hey, and that's the scene. It's going to loop in the background while you talk about it, Legacy. So go ahead and tell us a little bit more about the fight scene, buddy, and what you thought about it and why you wanted to bring it to class today.
Did the Japanese guy die at the end there?
Yeah, he got his throat slit.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah, by his own blade.
Yeah, I'll jump back so you can watch it again, Peg.
Hang on. Who's the good guy?
Chen Zhen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jet Li. Okay. So let's see. So this movie has like a phenomenal fight scene in regards to like trying to, again, we've been through the setup where you could go through it in a round basis. The first guy tries to figure out his pattern. It's like boss fights, where it's like you're just going getting the guy. You're in the fight. You don't know what his pattern is. You look at it, you get hit with it, and then wait, I can't use that move. I have to try something else. And then somewhere like in between the fight, you exchange more blows, and then each one shows progressively more and more damage until like the protag managed to get the upper hand for utilizing and breaking through all of his other options, damaging him enough to a point where he has the edge, or the high ground, if you will. So, the big awesome importance of this movie is that it alludes to previous fight scenes in the movie. As you notice with the eye twitch, with in the second round, where his eyes, like the general's eye, started to bleed, and Jet Li utilized that as an attack method.
Mm-hmm.
That was an allusion to a previous fight he had with trying to remember his name, the uncle, where it's like the wind was blinding him, but Jet Li is honorable and is like, no, I don't want to take advantage of your blind ability. Let's fight blindfolded. Whereas this is just like, this is a fight to the death. This is an untrustworthy guy, so he is going to utilize that in a fight.
I think that might be a thing we see over and over in Eastern media, is the idea of like combatants having honor when it's like, one individual against another.
Yeah.
To the extent that you'll literally bring yourself down to like, the level of like a crippled person that you're fighting against, just for the sake of like, I want to know, like, for sure I beat you fair and square.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for this though, this general, the Antag, is not honorable at all. He poisoned his master, and he's trying to kill them. So
well, why that is so particularly like, evil in that perspective.
It's more than just cheating to get ahead. It's a vile corruption of what should be an honorable fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So yeah, excellent work, Legacy. I appreciate showing this to class. I'm sure that the autists watching at home appreciate it as well. I know Alex Gomez does, because the film's older than he is.
That's right.
Film's older than you too, Legacy, because you're 12, right?
No, 22.
Legacy just turned
22.
Yes, this film is still much older than you, sir. This film was 94. It's about a decade older than you.
Like 10 years. Oh my goodness. Hey, I can go next if you Legacy, if you're all set.
Anything else you want to talk about, buddy?
What? No, I'm fine.
All right, thank you for sharing with us. Let me get
That was
Pops
good.
loaded up. All right, I saved his as dumbass who wants to talk too long. So
that's why I
would do that to Pops.
I didn't want to go quite last, because I'm like, all right, let me crank this out, and then whoever goes after me can rush through their segment.
Yeah, so good news, Pops is just going to be a slideshow chat of different images. He'll explain what we're going to see in a second. And it's just going to loop, so there's no Doge NFT on screen.
Yeah, so you're going to be seeing a lot of images that we grabbed off of Google about 2 hours ago. Anyway, yeah, like I said before at the introduction, I chose to do from Chapter 6. John Gardner in 1971 wrote a beautiful book called Grendel that was told in the first person from the perspective of the monster Grendel from the Beowulf legend. And it's interesting because he uses a lot of the same kind of writing techniques and little things here and there that people used back then. Like, I'm only going to bring this up because it's something that I actually think is cool as hell. And I know it's inspired other writers that I like, and I think it's cool. It's something called kennings, which you'll see in Old English. So a kenning is a writing motif, device, whatever. I don't know. It's a thing you include in your writing that is like, it's a way to describe a person or a character by like turning a verb into a noun, usually with a hyphen, then an er. And I'll bring that up in a sec. But Grendel himself is known among the people as an example of a kenning, the world rim walker, the earth rim monster, the walker of the world's weird wall. And you turn like walker or roamer or something like that, and you take that and you turn it into like, a combinated, like a hyphenated, you turn a verb into a noun by adding an er. It's interesting. And it's like, it just
Google has an
sounds,
example here, and I think I could use that pops to help chat. It says you turn it into a more metaphorical thing, such as oarsteed is what you would call a ship. Like it's use oars and you ride upon it. Therefore, that's what a ship would be. That's the quick, easy, dirty example to help you understand what's going on.
yeah.
Sorry, Pops.
I wanted to bring that up because it was cool. So this is the scene in chapter 6 where Grendel talks about his fight with the Thane called Unferth. So it's interesting for a little bit of context. In chapter 5, we spend the entire time where he goes to the dragon because he's kind of alone. His entire deal is that he's like alone, isolated, like has no one to talk to, is a lot of, what he complains about. And so he hears stories about himself from the King Hrothgar's mead hall, where he has like, a fiddler who sings songs and storytellers and everything. And he listens in and he's like, all right, he learns that he is apparently a direct descendant of the biblical Cain. And so he is a cursed race, a race cursed by God. And he's alone. His mother doesn't talk and he has no one to talk to. So what he does is he goes to the dragon for guidance, and the dragon can see the future. And his whole deal is like basically passive nihilism. He has no goal in life because he thinks that nothing matters. And Grendel tries to debate with him, but he feels like, a child almost. Like he's like just way, way below the dragon in intelligence. There's even a part where he talks about like, oh, let me tell you, he sang about God. And the dragon is like, what God? Where? Nothing matters. Do something different, And the dragon puts a charm on him when he leaves so that Grendel now can no longer be harmed by man's weapons. So like if you swing a sword at him or you shoot a bow and arrow or you stab him with a spear, he can't be hurt by it. And at first he thinks that it's an advantage because his whole deal is that he tries to find purpose in life by becoming like a brute who torments and terrorizes the Thanes, the men who live in it's Denmark where it takes place. So I hear. But yeah, obviously.
So they say.
So they say. I don't know. I wasn't around at the time. But it's interesting because the story precedes Christianity, but also it doesn't precede Christianity, but it takes a lot of inspiration from Christianity and mixes it with like Norse kind of Viking themes and boastful warriors and everything. So what Grendel does is he bursts into Hrothgar's mead hall, where the men and the soldiers are now sleeping after a night of drinking and partying and boasting and, blah, 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 blah. And that's his whole deal. He wants to terrorize these people because he has no other meaning in life. And it's interesting because he's like kind of an unreliable narrator, and the emotional swings that he goes through are crazy. So there's a part where he thinks like he rants to himself right before the scene. He goes, I am Grendel, wrecker of mead halls, wrecker of kings, and yet I am totally alone. And then he goes into the mead hall and he's like, he starts killing a lot of the men and like laughing at them. He calls them pompous fools. They're making boasts and he's just wiping them out one by one. And so he says, I can see the mead hall stretching before me like, like a endless path through time and space. Something like that is the quote. I don't have it right in front of me. But so it's like he goes from finding his purpose to again feeling like he's meaningless. And then he finds his purpose here in what becomes kind of an anti-battle almost, because ideologically, he's just so removed from everything that the people believe in. And so he's been killing a bunch of people, and then he says, as a crowning absurdity, my salvation at that moment came the man the Thanes called Unferth. And Unferth is interesting because Unferth had the chops to become a real true hero. Like, his whole deal is that he's a young guy who has like big aspirations, and he stands across the hall from Grendel, youthful, intense, and sober, which is important because everyone else obviously is not sober. They're all drunk and falling asleep and stumbling over themselves and getting killed. And he says he's taller than the others, and he stood out among the fellow Thanes like a horse in a herd of cows, which really gives you a good visual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. So there's
Fantastic
that.
visual.
And it shows that he's young, and says he has a light beard, and he goes, stand back, and the drunken little men back away, and the floor between them is cleared, and it's him versus Unferth. And Unferth starts making boasts, like an old school kind of old school.
Old sport here. You bragging before a fight. I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to do that thing.
And it's interesting because he tells Grendel, monster, prepare to die. Are you right with your god? And Grendel laughs. He goes, are you right with your god? And he goes, oh. And he says this internally, like in the narrative. He goes, he was one of those. Like, he's like taunting him the whole time. And so there's a moment where, so Unferth, it says he starts like kind of sidestepping and circling around Grendel. And then Grendel goes, yeah, but he's 30 feet away. This maneuver is ridiculous. And Unferth says, tell them when you go to hell that Unferth, son of Edgelaf, sent you. And Grendel goes, let me tell them I was sent by, and here's another kenning, he calls him Sideways Walker. He's making fun of him. So,
That's awesome, dude. That is
right.
so
So the whole
funny.
deal is that, yeah, Unferth is boasting, and it ends up being Grendel makes fun of him, and he starts getting a little uncomfortable because we don't know yet, but it says that we learn that he does understand what the monster is saying. He's speaking in like an older ancient tongue. So some of the people know it, some of the people don't understand it. And shoot, let me see. Yeah, he calls himself a hero. He goes, known far and wide in these Scanian lands as a hero among the shieldings. And Grendel again starts making fun of him. He goes, oh, you're a hero. I thought heroes were only in poetry. I've never seen a real life hero before. So again, taunting him, kind of making this young guy uncomfortable. And so Unferth tries to regain his nerve by, boasting some more and insulting him. He says, wretched shape, dread creature. And then Grendel has an idea. He sees a table with, he calls it a trestle table piled with apples. And of course, he knows that this guy cannot hurt him. So the whole time, he picks up an apple and he starts polishing it, and he's just talking to himself. And he's like, "Oh, it must be a terrible thing, a very stressful thing. Being a hero, everybody always watching you, weighing you, making sure you're still heroic, huh?" Like, he's taunting him the entire time. He's like, "Oh, heroes are made up. Heroes are only in poetry." And Unferth is arguing with him, and he's trying to be like, you monster, foul beast. And then eventually, Unferth can't take it anymore because he's getting made fun of in front of everybody, obviously, as a young kid, trying to be a hero with a blooming ego at that point, I'm sure. It's hard for you to keep your composure, especially when everybody's looking at you after you told them, stand back. I'm going to take this, blah, 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 blah. So he charges at Grendel, and Grendel gets his awful idea, this taunting little idea. He throws the apple at him. And then he starts throwing a bunch of apples at him, and he's just raining down apples, and he's laughing at him. And he's like, you can't even come within 3 feet of me. You're, poor, miserable virgin, he calls them. He calls on. Yep, that's a direct quote. So he buries him under a pile of apples, and he says to him, what did he say? He goes, such is life, such is heroism, something like that. Let me see if I can find the quote. Unferth. I've got it written down here in front of me. Hang on. Monster. Poor miserable virgin, poor jangler. Such is life. And he said, I mocked a sigh. And he goes, such is dignity. Such is dignity. You know, dignity is meaningless. Life is meaningless. Nihilism, blah, 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 blah. And so he leaves. Grendel's like, yeah, whatever, little kid. And then he gets out of there. And then here's what's interesting. He goes, I was sure, going back to my cave, it was nearly dawn, that he would not follow. They never did. But I was wrong. And this is an important character moment for Unferth still before he gets kind of totally defeated, because Grendel does kind of, in a way, force him into a more nihilistic view by the end of this whole thing. But he's talking about him. He goes, he was a new kind of shielding, and he must have started tracking me that same morning. A driven man, a maniac. A maniac really shows that he's got that inner drive, even though it's probably for the wrong reasons, because he's more embarrassed that Grendel made fun of him and threw apples at him and broke his nose and just walked out laughing. But he says that he arrived at the cave 3 nights later. And a little bit of context here. When Unferth arrives in Grendel's cave, he is not in good shape at all. let me tell you. So Grendel's cave is to get there you have to swim through. It's not totally clear with the style of writing and just I guess what it was inspired by, because it's fantasy monster. But so he lives in a cave underneath a lake of fire or a burning lake. But what's important is that it's a lake and you have to swim through it to get to him, which is also why Beowulf is able to get to him before anyone, because Beowulf has the superpower of being able to swim and hold his breath for long distances and everything. So Beowulf has a very physical advantage rather than using weapons, which is also why he's able to eventually defeat Grendel. But we're not going to get to that. That's not important right now. So Unferth arrives in his cave and rolls up on the bank, and he can't even stand. He can't see in the darkness, and he's covered in a crosshatch of festering sores, I think. And he goes to the leavings of the fire snakes. There are fire snakes in the water that just bite you and just are nasty and everything. So Unferth comes by himself also, which is also important, because coming alone shows that he has that kind of potential to be heroic and try to be a hero based on
He's got
internal
that dog in him.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I feel bad for Unferth at this scene, because you really, really he had the makings of a hero, and it's only
you want him to be the guy.
It's only because of what happens here that he's not that guy. It really breaks. And we'll get to the quote where I'll read that quote when we get to it. But he's he can't even see, and Grendel's mother is stalking back and forth, and Grendel is holding her back, being no, he's mine. Don't touch him. I want to see what he has to say and everything. And he raises his sword from where he's panting on his belly, and he's like, Unferth has come. And Grendel is like, ugh, what are you doing? So, actually, no, it says, I smiled. My mother moved back and forth like a bear behind me, stirred up by the smell. And then he tries to crawl toward him, and the sword is just scraping on the ground, and it's, nothing. And so we see once again Unferth being a young kid trying to boast himself into confidence again. He tries to make a boast. And at this point, it shows a level of inner heroism, because he's almost accepting that even though he made it all the way down here to fight, he's going to lose and he's going to die in his mind. And so he says, it will be sung year on year and age on age that Unferth went down through the burning lake. He paused to pant. And then he goes, and gave his life in battle with the world rim monster, which is something of a kenning, I think. And then he's he's just panting there, says nothing. And then Grendel says, it dawned on me that he was waiting for me to kill him. I did nothing. I sat down and put my elbows on my knees and my chin on my fists and merely watched, which shows Grendel does not believe in the whole poetic kind of heroic narrative. He's very nihilistic. He doesn't. He would rather see this man be like tortured in his mind and go on living, knowing that like he just doesn't like he's just not going to be a hero.
Yet, not only was his destiny not to kill Grendel, his destiny was also not to die in battle with Grendel. Like you're just fucked, kid. Just leave. Just go somewhere else and do something else. You're
It's
not
the
the
funniest.
guy.
You're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And he tries to boast, and he's trying to like get at him and just be like, please come on, like let me at least have a hero's death.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, even now you mock me. And Grendel goes, he was close to tears. And again, before this, like I said, Grendel's completely alone, miserable, probably, I don't know, clinically depressed if we would say. Because the whole story is I think he only talks to like 3 human beings in the entire story. The most of it is just him narrating his own kind of like, craziness.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, Unferth was close to tears, but if he wept, I was not sure I could control himself. His pretensions to uncommon glory were one thing, but if for even an instant he pretended to misery like mine, he's like, if this guy really shows that he's miserable, he's like, I can't, I'm going to have to kill this guy. But Unferth holds strong. Unferth tries to hold strong, and he goes, you think me a fool? I heard what you said. I caught your nasty insinuations. He goes, and then he starts ranting about what being a real hero and inner heroism is, which is a good character moment for him, but also makes it so sad when he ends up, as he ends up, we'll say, he goes, you imply that what I've made of myself is fairy tale stuff. And then his lips trembled. I was certain he would cry, and I would have to destroy him from pure disgust. But he held it in. Yep, and a little more of his voice comes back. Oh my goodness, I'm flipping my pages here. So he's trying to whisper, and he goes, this is no cloud, this is no syllable phantom that stands here shaking its sword at you. He's trying to say, like, this isn't poetry, this is real. Please, let me have some meaning, let me try. And Grendel just sits there. And he goes, and here's the important part for his characterization. He goes, a hero is not afraid to face cruel truth. Okay, you talk of heroism as noble language, dignity, but it's more than that, as my coming here has proved. No man above us will ever know whether Unferth died here or fled to the hills like a coward. Only you and I and God will know the truth. And that's inner heroism, right? And so that's him really, really showing what he believes in that moment. But then Grendel is not impressed. Grendel goes, yeah, so it would have been in a poem if he were a character. But alas, reality is essentially shoddy, right? So that goes to show the nihilistic side of Grendel. And he sighs and waits, and he goes, the whole shit-ass scene was his idea, not mine. And eventually, Unferth, though he can't see, he still realizes, like, okay, this guy's just mocking me now. He's like, I don't think he's going to actually follow through with this. He's waiting for me to give up and basically subscribe to the entire meaninglessness and blah 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 blah. And so Unferth says, I understand, and then Grendel goes, I thought that he would laugh at the bottomless stupidity of my cynicism. But while the laugh was still starting at the corners of his eyes, another look came, close to fright. And he goes, you think me deluded, tricked by my own walking fairy tale. You think I came without a hope of winning, came to escape indignity by suicide. And now Unferth tries to laugh, and he's, choking on himself because he's, beat up. And he goes, I didn't know how deep the pool was. I had a chance. I knew I had no more than that. And that's all the hero asks for. And so Unferth is like, he's very much like, listen, my life has meaning. I am trying to be a hero. I want to die a hero's death if I have to, because that's what's real to me. And he ends up saying something like, if I can find it, something about how reality is also shoddy for heroes, but they find meaning by, let me see. Oh, yeah, here it is. Except in the life of a hero, the whole world's meaningless. The hero sees value beyond what's possible. That's the nature of a hero. It kills him, of course, ultimately, but it makes the whole struggle of humanity worthwhile. So he still has belief in something greater than life itself, which is why it's so kind of contrasted between them. The Grendel is very nihilistic and thinks life is meaningless. Do whatever you want. I'll just torment these people to find meaning, and that's all I have. Have nobody else to talk to and everything. And Grendel goes, yeah, and it breaks up the boredom. Breaks up the boredom, which is like just complete contrast between trying to give this inspirational speech and Grendel's like, yeah, all right, buddy. Like, basically. And he says, one of us is going to die tonight. Does that break up your boredom? And Grendel goes, it's not true. A few minutes from now, I'm going to carry you back to Hrothgar safe and sound. So much for poetry. And that is what he ends up doing. And of course, here's the part where even Grendel makes it, he puts the onus on Unferth. He puts the onus on Unferth to like make a decision on like, all right, are you really going to truly believe that it's meaningless? Right? And so Unferth goes, I'll kill myself. And Grendel goes, up to you. But you admit it may at least seem a trifle cowardly to some. Because now Unferth again still has the insecurity of like, if he kills himself, it means he doesn't die a hero's death, and there will be somebody else to witness it, which is Grendel, right?
Yeah, so, and also he'll deny Grendel what he wants. He'll at least have that.
Yeah, so he doesn't want to do that. And what ends up happening is he basically just waits and waits, because he does still think probably that Grendel's going to kill him. Minutes go by, and then Grendel says, it came to me that he had quit. And here's a great quote, because this shows exactly the type of suffering that Unferth went through in this scene. It says, he had glimpsed a glorious ideal, had struggled toward it and seized it and come to understand it, and was disappointed. One could sympathize. So then, and then he leaves him there, just exhausted, beat up, with his sword just on the ground in front of him until he goes to sleep. And Grendel carries him back to the mead hall and just, just drops him off and is like, all right, buddy, there you go. No hero's death, no heroic status. You can go back and live in, among these people that you embarrassed yourselves by, getting hit in the head with apples and trying to charge me and losing. And I just leave you there because you're not even worth killing, because you're nothing but a poetry ideal thing that's not even real. But
you're
here's
a loser.
So I'm going to read this next paragraph that ends this chapter, because it shows what Unferth becomes and kind of the way that he himself is almost becomes something of a nihilist, because all he wants now is just to die in battle with Grendel, just to know that he somehow has like retained a level of honor as a hero, because he keeps on with this battle and Grendel smacks him away and ignores him and laughs at him and everything, and he can't hurt him. So here we go. And this is cool. He goes, he lives on, bitter, fever. I can't read. Oh my goodness. He lives on, bitter, feebly challenging my midnight raids from time to time, 3 times this summer, crazy with shame that he alone is always spared, and furiously jealous of the dead. I laugh when I see him. He throws himself at me, or he cunningly sneaks up behind, sometimes in disguise, a goat, a dog, a sickly old woman, and I roll on the floor with laughter. So much for heroism, so much for the harvest virgin, so much also for the alternative visions of blind old poets and dragons. Right? So he's mocking him for trying to achieve the level of a storybook hero. You know what I mean? And Unferth, this poor young kid at the time, because the story goes on, I think, for another 12 years. Technically, it jumps back and forth. but it just shows that he almost is forcing this guy to also become as kind of nihilistic and thinking that life is meaningless and I would rather just die an honorable death than anything. So that I think the characterization of Unferth in that sequence, because we don't get as much characterization later on, but that entire sequence really showed when Grendel finally found himself as far as wanting to torment these people. And he says after he leaves the mead hall, he goes, "I got more satisfaction out of that apple fight than anyone else in any other fight in my life." So it shows that he is kind of that's him. Like it's very much like he finds meaning in tormenting these people and thinking that that's his purpose as like a cursed descendant of Cain. Like he's only a killer and everything. I don't know. That's pretty good. But what's also interesting about it, I'm flipping to my other notes on it right now.
Oh my.
He sorry, somebody came up to me. What did I say before?
Think. Yeah, like you were just talking about why Grendel was found purpose with tormenting people.
Yeah, that
Oh,
he
yeah.
enjoyed this more than anything, and that's a character moment, which is a great character moment.
People tell me to buy eggs. I'm getting distracted. I'm sorry. But yeah, that's a great character moment for him. And he says he got more satisfaction out of it. And what's important about it is that it's still like a very, very fleeting satisfaction. Like you have to go on these raids nightly and you have to wait for it. And like even then, it's like, all right, I killed a few of them. And that's why before we had the kind of like weird emotional swing between I have meaning and then like I saw the meat hall stretching before me for miles endlessly. I saw myself killing them, and he like starts to think that it doesn't mean anything. And then he kind of jumps back and forth, but that captures the fleeting tone of like the satisfaction that he's getting in those moments. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got to jump for a sec.
All right, so while Pops is, I guess, gone,
Mm-hmm.
do you want to start your stuff, Pag? You want to talk about you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, kind of.
Hang on, I gotta load the common cloak for Pag.
Let me take a piss. Let me drain the main vein real quick.
The crab pipe.
The beer. Yeah, the crab pipe. I will be back in like 17 milliseconds.
Go for it. While you do that, chat, how's everybody hanging in there? Not all furious. I saw your chats. Don't worry. I see that his girlfriend uses rice blades for him, and then for Alex Gomez, I did not see the Beowulf film. I believe that one's made by Zack Snyder, if I recall.
He said the 2007 one was.
Oh,
I don't want to say that's the.
Oh, that's the one. That's the one that it was made by the same guys that made Polar Express. That is such a.
Yeah, that was. Oh my god, that scared me.
You know what? I do have to give him credit. It is scary, and Crispin Glover, the dad from Back to the Future, played the Grendel monster. I don't like how he looks because I don't think it's it's just not how I imagine it, and it doesn't really match this book either. But he does an excellent job because they did like kind of the facial capture animation, and he really does look like a disturbed kind of monster. Yeah.
Like an absolute freak.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting too in that movie, the scene where Beowulf defeats him. He actually shrinks from like something that's 30 feet tall to like a man-sized little pathetic, almost Smeagol looking thing.
Down.
If you watch it, yeah, he actually does shrink. It's freaky. All right, hang on.
Things you want to hit on top before we go forward?
No, that's all right. I got to grab something from the house. That has nothing to do with this. I got all the thoughts that I have across, I think.
Yeah, you're definitely going on a whole novel thing.
I know, dude. That's why.
Great thoughts on things. He's one of my favorite people to talk with. Basically anything with. when it comes to stories, because he, unlike a lot of people who I get stuck dealing with in the online space, and I don't mean that as an insult to anybody specifically, but I know who I'm thinking of. It's very one-dimensional every time I talk to them about stuff. It's very irritating because it's like, guys, stories are beautiful. We should be engaging on these things, on high levels that the authors probably want them to be engaged on. Not every story, of course. The Marvel slop doesn't need to get the same ranking as something, like a high work of art here. But man, there's so many pieces of work that I just try to have a discussion with people on, and it just turns into, yeah, well, I like the way that Thor punched. It's like, oh, you're missing on it, man. You're missing it. That's why,
Yeah, dude. That's why, like, that's another reason why people weren't so critical of like the corny looking stuff, almost like the old westerns and the kung fu and everything, because it still felt genuine. You know what I mean?
so
Mhm.
much art in them.
Yeah, and it's like the people that give movies crap now, they're very much like surface level critiques, like, oh, just this doesn't make sense that it would happen. It's like there's so many more layers to it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because filmmakers suck, they don't have that gravitas to back it up. So you get stuck with the only thing you can actually talk about and critique is kind of what happens on screen. So you're stuck in this little bit of a cycle where it's like, I have to talk about what's happening on screen because I'm not getting anything else of the rest of the work, but then what's happening on screen is lame and boring. It's very upsetting and very annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like, oh, you know about that fancy trope, or you know that thing that's been around a while? Well, guess what? That's a stupid thing. We need to make fun of it, even though we're gonna use it.
I
Yeah.
think that, and this is somebody who grew to love English as as one of my favorite subjects. I think English teachers and teaching of English in school is sort of what ruined a lot of the discussion of these pieces of media, because what you end up having is a lot of people who have, I guess, just midwits, if it's the best way to put them, people who are of average intelligence think and are scraping at real intelligent thoughts, but they can't quite fathom it correctly. So they're stuck in this situation where they assume that the surface level takes and the surface level stuff is deep. A lot of Snyder fans are like this. I'm not calling anybody specifically out except for maybe Rooney, but they see Snyder pose Superman like Jesus. They think that that's deep, but it's like, well, what are you saying here? Is that him being is he a Christ-like figure? Is that what we're talking about? Is we're supposed to see that our relationship with Superman is similar to that of Christ? Or is this a critique of Christ? Is it saying Christ is actually a flawed thing because I'm really focusing on Christ's humanity? When really, no, it's just a reference to the picture. When I think it's during the death of Superman, the comic, on the cover, when Superman's dying, and I think it's... Like I say, who's holding him on the cover? But of the
Lois.
first Lois is, and it's the La Pieta pose where that's the same exact work that Michelangelo had, where it's Virgin Mary holding Jesus as he's dying while she's all covered in the veil. It's the same pose, the same way the clothing is draped upon her. That's meaningful because it's saying this that this is their Christ figure, their great hero is gone. Whereas when Snyder does it, he's just doing a reference. Like, why does he look like he's on a cross? Is this because he's ascending? Is he descending? Like, what's the theme here? And it's just so frustrating because I feel like people, they'll say, that's the La Pieta pose. I know what that is. Okay, well, what is the meaning behind stealing that pose? Oh, I don't know what the meaning is. I just know what the pose is. I'm smart. I read books before.
It's just member berries. You
It's
remember
member
when
berries,
this
but
thing
for
happened?
dweebs
This
is the
other
worst
thing?
part. It's member berries for people who go onto Reddit and read interesting facts to say at parties, such as, do you know football is actually pronounced football across the world? Yeah, I know. Greenland is actually the icy one, and Iceland is the green one. Thanks. I'm going to throw you in the pool now.
All right. Yeah, that sounds about right.
All right, sounds like Pag is back with
Anyway,
his
I'm
beer.
back, by the way. I am.
All right, so here we go. The Cavalcade of Cum. This is what Pag wanted to talk about. His own book. Buy it now, linked below.
So true. Actually, no. This actually isn't out. It's
Buy
the
it now,
second
linked
out of
below.
3 novels. Not even the first one is out. Although by this time next week, I'm going to start releasing them chapter by chapter. in a online form, and then once whole novels have been released, I'll then start releasing those. Uh, so yeah. Anyway, so this is from the second one. The main character, it's military science fiction. So the main character is, of course, a badass Marine guy. I would say that these books are the film equivalent of action movie films. That's kind of what I'm aiming for. Uh, anyway, so I guess I'll read this selection. Um, okay. Uh so our hero is in a he's in the bottom of a bunker. He's looking for the reactor to this communication station because he wants to send out a message. And that's pretty much the opening to this. He's in a very dark room. Please, Algernon said, and I shouted in surprise and flinched. The knee-jerk reaction flung the remains across the room. Its mangled body burbled a disturbingly human groan as it impacted the wall. I cursed my way all the way over as I crossed towards him. My core is inside my chest, Algernon said, wasting no time lest I decided to smack him again. Instead of its usual normal human tones, his voice had a slight mechanical buzz. Suffered major damage to all systems. All right, bud, I responded, and started carving him open like a Thanksgiving turkey. Inside his chest, there was a fist-sized orb, which I knew from experience was likely silvery and reflective. Not that my pan-seared eyes would report that to me, and not that it would be very shiny when I yanked it out and it was covered in android giblets. After pulling it out and putting it in my lower back pouch, safely armored from the world, I straightened up, and as the sound of something hitting the ground reached my ears. Before I even knew it was happening, I was throwing myself to the side. Whatever it was, my attacker, and that's kind of the image I'm invoking on the screen, the whole android laying in its own guts. He finds one of those and yanks something out of its chest. Whatever it was, my attacker was blurry and indistinct in my echolocation, likely a result of some sort of noise-absorbent outer shell. Now that it was moving and making noise on its own, I could at least somewhat detect it, though. Before it slowed down and disappeared, I hit the ground, rolled, and jumped up at it. Keeping it moving too fast to be stealthy was my only shot, so I began a furious series of swipes with my kukri. It kept losing ground, and I kept pushing forward until its back hit the wall behind it. With nowhere left to go, it lunged forward. One of its limbs streaked out and snatched my outstretched wrist with tremendous strength and began to twist. As I felt the bones in my wrist crack, I stepped forward and started throwing jabs into what I thought was its body. My fist slammed into something as hard as battle steel a couple times before it snatched that wrist too. To my surprise, whatever my cloaked opponent was, it seemed to actually be stronger than me, and without being able to properly sense it, I wasn't going to be able to grapple it with any real skill. Well, that was just too damn bad for the both of us. I activated all of the remaining grenades hanging across my chest. 3 frag grenades wasn't a lot of frag grenades for someone expecting to go into a long engagement. When they were strapped to your chest, however, 3 frag grenades were a lot of frag grenades. Next thing I knew, I found myself on my ass, back to the wall behind me with my head ringing. My mouth tasted like blood, my NII told me that I had minor shrapnel wounds all over, and my everything hurt. Also, the combat armor I'd newly purchased was pretty much a write-off. Fortunately, I could still hear, and my damaged brain started piecing together an image from the sound I was getting. Unfortunately, my opponent was still alive. The grenades had clearly scoured away some of his cloaking, because I could clearly see him. He, presumably a human, but definitely at the very least humanoid, was pulling himself to his feet in a daze. I had no idea where my kukri is. It was probably shattered, but my pistol was made of much tougher stuff, and it was still faithfully latched to my hip. Sluggishly, I yanked it from its holster, flipped it over to full auto, and hosed the guy down with burning 12mm slugs. My slide locked back, the last of my casings dropped to the ground, and the stealthy bastard across the room from me had finally stopped moving. I loaded another mag into it, picked myself up, and limped over to his body. There was no kill like overkill, so I stomped on his head and torso until there was no chance of him getting back up. Feeling much better after that, I moved over to the heavy metal door between me and the reactor. At that point, I figured I was about out of options, so I started feeling around for an access panel to either side of the big door. After finding it, a slight impression, I slapped one of my remaining relays on it and triggered to communicate. Melvin, you fool, this isn't... I'm not in the mood for your shit, Ono. It's the door to the reactor, I know. Open it up. All right, give me a minute. Sure, I told her, then fished around in my pockets for a cigarette. My helmet was pretty much useless at this point, so I yanked it off and dropped it, then stuck the smoke stick between my lips and sparked it with a thumb. I was about 3 puffs in when the hatch finally sprang open. Behind it, there was a skinny guy with a shotgun, which, after a moment's hesitation, roared as he shot me right in the face. It was regular buckshot, and my eyes were already out, so it didn't do anything but ring my bell. Well, and piss me off. I stormed into the reactor room, snatched the double barrel out of his hands, and beat him to death with it. And that's pretty much that action scene.
No, I'm
Beautiful.
I'm picking up on something.
Mm-hmm.
You have a very intimate understanding with the minds of your characters.
Yeah, I try to kind of get inside their head.
It has a very like internal tone, you know what I mean? It's like moment to moment, it's very much like, here's what I was thinking, here's what I saw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mm.
it's meant to be like super contained his point of view, and you're supposed to get like a very distilled version of what he's seeing at all times. I wouldn't say that he's exactly a unreliable narrative or narrator, because everything he's recalling is in digital memory, but it is heavily influenced by what he's thinking all the time.
Boy kissing, of course. By the way,
Boy
I just want
kissing.
to say quickly, good night, not all furious. We love you very much.
Yep.
Night.
That was awesome, Pack. Thank you.
It was neat. Yeah.
This is
Hearing
why
it,
you all need to get his books. We finally bullied James into finally reading them, even though I bought the book from him a while ago. So
I got those, yeah. This is one of those examples where I feel like hearing it in the author's voice, literally, does help catch the tone of the scene.
way more.
Yeah.
Damn, yeah.
Such a horrible reader. I would suggest he does his own audiobooks, but he can't get his fucking words right.
Look, I didn't practice this at all. I've zero practice. This is first take. I feel like that was
nothing.
okay.
I do it right the first time. Get on my level.
You know who does?
All right.
You know who's the best I've ever heard? You probably don't. Harlan Ellison narrating his own.
So good.
So good.
I haven't actually listened to the narration. Does he do I Have No Mouth?
Yes. Yeah.
That's the best one he does.
It's on YouTube, and he captures the kind of schizophrenic breakdown so incredibly well. But yeah, that's what I mean. It's part of like figuring out who you are as a writer, and like, you know, it's like finding your audience is one thing, and what your goal is to achieve with writing is one thing, but also finding your own voice is very important in any of those scenarios. And it honestly, it makes it more fun. It kind of helps you, once you realize kind of the kind of writer you want to be, it helps you very much kind of figure out the flow of your ideas and everything, and it feels more natural. I hope I'm like making like a point that's like you can objectively understand what I'm saying. You know?
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's what you sound like, you know. It's your voice. If you read the novel in your head, what the voice sounds like is your author's voice. Like that's how that works, you know. And everybody's writing, it sounds a little bit different inside your head. And
I don't
know.
Find your own thing.
Key inflection points that allow you to really stress out what a character's thinking. You know, because there's a difference. I mean, you know, I might get yelled at by YouTube for this, but there's a reason that people say that commas are important, because the difference between helping your uncle jack off a horse and helping your uncle jack off a horse.
Yeah, it's a lot different.
Let's eat grandma.
Yeah, let's eat grandma versus let's eat grandma.
Oh man, yeah. Honestly, I'm an absolute menace when it comes to ignoring punctuation. But it does.
I know you are. I know your favorite book.
From scene to scene, honestly, other books I've read, like having like, you know, the occasional hyphen or the dash or the comma or the, you know, what is it, semicolon and everything. It does help. Like, this is the way you were supposed to read this. You know, it almost the reader.
Yeah, it's telling the audience where the character is pausing to speak while they think. And whatnot.
You can tell. Yeah, it feels like a story is being told to you rather than just you're reading like a textbook.
Yeah.
In a way.
I know I mentioned it earlier, but that's one of the things I would say for like the Dresden Files. I've seen a lot of people talking online that the books are fine, but the audiobook is what sets it apart. And of course, Donald Farias, who loves the audiobooks, went to bed before he could comment on it. But yeah, dude, the way that Marsters does the audiobook for that, he is Harry Dresden. It is phenomenal that he's got the inflection down so well for that
Right.
character because it's a first person book like what Pag's writing here. So for him, but he's just got it down so well because he's so connected with the author.
You're just reading it the way that it was intended to be read. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's super important. I'd love to do my own audiobooks, but it takes like 8 trillion hours, and I don't have 8 trillion hours. I have less than that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can certainly read it better than I can. I'm a young blood. I don't got a confidence of my own vernacular.
Yeah, it's something that comes with practice. I haven't done it in like 4 years. It's been a long time since I've read something like long form out loud. Except to like my baby now and again.
I guess
but that's a little different.
My only experience with audiobooks is with was it Bionicle Revised, narrated by Isaac Miner, and then there's some graphic audio stuff of certain Marvel comics, not non-comics, but there was a novel of it. Christopher Bennett's Spider-Man: Drowned in Thunder. That one was actually really fucking good.
Well, I'll tell you what. You should listen to I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream.
I have heard of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Oh, good.
I've read it. I haven't listened to it. I bet it is pretty good.
It's about 40 minutes, and the kid, I think I told you about it, and you go, he really sent it. Like, he went all out. It's so good.
I think that Ellison and that book, or I shouldn't even say book, that story is the most fascinating, interesting, and wild, like, just author relationship with the work ever. Because not only did he love the work, the original thing, he did the audiobook. He also basically drew all the cartoon stuff for the comic panels. He was there the whole time, and then they made a game version of it, and he was there for the entire game version, giving critiques and helping them out. And all the stories are slightly different, and all of them still have the core concept. It's just the most fascinating relationship an author's ever had with the work. It's the most complete, I would say, even more so than Tolkien.
Damn.
Yeah. It's you have like an intimate understanding with the story you're telling, and you have that level of dedication. It's going to add to hopefully add to the quality. But it's interesting because I think in the game he voiced the robot, and he did it differently than he did in the audiobook.
That's the thing, and they're different, and they're still the same story, but they're different in some of the inflections, which adds to it. And it's just, you're watching or you're reading or you're listening, like, man, this is just, each story is just different enough that I'm enjoying going through each one differently, but they're the same enough that it's like, I know what's going to happen. It's just fascinating.
I don't know. There's certain audiobooks that I'm just like, this voice is so good for this book. Like Grendel was one of those. Anything by Richard Poe, who narrates it, is one of those. Legacy, I can recommend you some audiobooks if you want.
The person who does Ubik does a really, really good job. There's a big old fat businessman in there, and oh my goodness, he voices him perfectly. Rumstetter. It's just fantastic.
Let me tell you something. The kid, God bless him, that did The Stars My Destination. He made it himself. It's not good.
There's an actual Stars My Destination that was actually really good. I don't, it was phenomenal.
I brought it up before. It's just the one I found on YouTube before the podcast. It was like 17 parts long, and it was a kid doing it, and I'm like, all right, he's mispronouncing every other word, but I need to get this story done. And I feel like if I were to read the book myself and see, aren't there parts where like the text kind of like swirls on the screen and gives that kind of trippy effect? It's a different experience, obviously, and
that's kind of funny.
I feel like the voice that I heard it in when I listened to the audiobook almost took away from the story. But I don't know if that
can happen. A bad reader is very bad. Yeah. Like can easily destroy your experience. That's kind of the funny thing about audiobooks is that they're not purely the author's intent anymore.
No.
it is now like 2 people that have their thumbs in this pot of chili. It's pretty easy to consider the editor.
Unless you got
sometimes it's great and sometimes it don't work.
Yeah.
But that's why punctuation does help regardless of who's the one perceiving the story, you know? If you want it to, you can have it be, you know, I'll tell you exactly when to pause and when to inflect and when this is in all caps or italicized or
Mm-hmm.
And punctuation can help give the storyteller's perspective as well. Like, think about, like, if you just decide that a certain word should be put in quotation marks as if it's like a mockery or something, that gives the reader a lot of perspective. I'm just spewing random thoughts here, but you know what I mean?
I think you're completely correct,
Look.
and it's a valid point because there's other things like, especially I know as an author, you'll be trying to write something, and like maybe you want to put a twang in it to make the guy sound a little bit uneducated, or like you want to mispronounce a word specifically. So you have to now recap with when I put the word here, like let's just use the pristine because I know you hated the way the guy pronounced it. It's like pristine is what he said in the audiobook.
No, I shit you not. He said prestigian. He mixed up the letters, not just.
Yeah, you know, instead of
And then he said
pristine,
it once, and he was like, "I have to do this forever now."
Yeah. Yeah, so if you know, I don't want to be mean to the guy who did it, of course, but like if you say the word pristine and you call it prestigian, then you know that that person is maybe less educated or maybe English is not his first language, which is good because that's a good thing if it's a story that you want to mispronounce that word. But in Pops' case, it took away from the work greatly. Also, very, very happy birthday to you, Future Wario. Congratulations on not dying.
Yeah,
Right on.
congratulations.
Another one.
Another one bites the dust.
Another year behind you forever. You'll never get it back.
So true, Oomphy.
Legacy. You got any input on audiobooks, or you're still a newbie?
I guess I'm saying I'm still a little bit of a noob, even though I feel like I should. I actually want to try it, but I probably need like a full cast of people because I can't read for shit. I can't say nouns for shit.
They're all place you can find a lot of influences.
The Audible book for The Stand, Stephen King's The Stand. It's a good one too.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, and I think The Stand is a fantastic story. Like that's a grade A story right there.
That is so good. The Stand, I really wish The Stand had like. There's so many books that have been made into TV shows and movies that are like fine, and I just look at like, man, you could do so much better. There's just this because The Stand would crush as like an HBO miniseries. Oh my god.
Oh, for sure.
The fact that they haven't picked it up is a shame, and some of the HBOs deserves to be flogged. It's right there. It's got all the themes that they like at HBO. It's edgy. It's brutal. It's got everything they want.
Mm-hmm.
It's got boobs.
It's got boobs. It's got rape. What else do you want?
So true, Oomphy.
What's Berserk about? Rape and murder. Rape and beatings. Rape and something else.
Yeah,
it's
but that's
mostly
like, exactly. That is pretty much what Berserk's about. So, but like, there's enough. The problem with Berserk though is just too much gay sex, not enough straight sex. So HBO wouldn't adopt it.
What are the fight scenes in The Stand?
The fight scenes in The Stand?
I don't think there are that many, honestly.
Oh, there's a couple. I know that I know we can talk about rape, but when the guys on the way to Colorado meet with the rape gang who's got the 12 girls because they're afraid that they have 13, they'll be cursed. That's a great fight scene.
Yeah, well, I mean, they just kind of shoot them.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, though. Because Stephen King doesn't write action scenes very well, so it's very quick. They're very quick, and and also it fits with the theme of The Stand that the action scenes aren't drawn out because violence is quick, dirty. It's not fun. Everybody's screaming, and it's over as fast as possible, which is very thematic for the entire book. Because again, King knows how to write. He doesn't know how to do anything else in his life except for write, especially not politics. But like, holy crap! You could imagine that being drawn out and shown in so much more detail in the HBO show. I want to cite it because I know it's gets horrible, but like the first Last of Us game, the way that violence is portrayed in a lot of the cutscenes there, and how like it's quick and sometimes it's brutal and bloody and it lasts for a while. Each impact does. That's how the stands fight scenes used to be. Obviously, the gameplay parts of The Last of Us don't count, but like when it's a cutscene, the way the cutscenes are filmed is great.
You know what it is? It's also something. It reminds me of the way that like it feels more realistic almost when you don't have like the backing like soundtrack of like extra details and everything. Like whether it's a movie or not, it still puts you in the scene if the guy can write well to have something happen that quickly and that intensely all at once without like anything beyond what's flashing right in front of your eyes.
Yes.
No extra details, no meat on the sandwich. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also, a couple other fight scenes in the stand. The final fight scene's obviously the big one that comes to mind. The prison riot before that we hear about off screen with the guy who's drowned the one rat in the prison. He waits till Randall shows up. Anytime Randall shows up, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Randall. What a bastard.
So true. So true. Oomphy.
Yeah, chat. I think that's a pretty good coverage for today. If
Yeah.
anybody has any questions in chat, we'll get them to them. Otherwise, I think it's a great time for us to end episode 41 of the Council of Candor. Links are below to both Discord and to Pag's books that you can get. Future Warrior, you're 27, by the way. Congratulations. That makes you older than, I believe, 2 members of the panel. And younger than the other 2. Ancient MFer, yeah, he is. Don't worry, son. I was your age, like 8 years ago. Jeez.
Back in my day, when I was that young, we
When
used
I
to
had all my
own
teeth.
people.
No, just kidding. I didn't have all my teeth when I was 27.
Yeah, join the club if you know what I
Exactly.
mean.
But yeah. So you all have an excellent night. Thank you for joining us today. Discord is linked below. Any closing thoughts that you have, rest of the panel here? Any other comments, concerns?
Everybody subscribe to Blackaroony and read Grendel. And read Grendel without the perspective of a school student who's like, I got to read this dumb thing. Read it and appreciate it, please, because I love it, and I think like most people who appreciate like prose and literature stuff will probably get
During the
it.
course of this podcast, I picked up Grendel.
You're the man.
Yep, seemed like it was worth it.
During the course of this podcast, I went to my local library and burned all the copies of Grendel.
You're the man. You are somehow also the man.
Yep, so true, Oomphy.
Legacy, any comments you have, little buddy?
No, this is actually a pretty fun stream.
I'm glad you were here,
Yeah,
man.
good
It's always
time.
fun to have you. You've
Legacy.
had some great streams with us so far. I've been really enjoying them.
Oh yeah,
This is, I
thank
believe,
you.
your 3rd stream?
It's at least his 3rd.
Yeah, at least my 3rd.
You've been working on anything you're going to release soon, or what's going on?
I'm still figuring out some drafts. I'm trying to write one right now. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. My next video should be out in a week or 2. I've been working away at it the best I can, while also trying to spend as much time as I can with my mother. So, otherwise, chat, thank you for joining us. You all have an excellent night, and I love you all. Goodbye.